Hello, my friends. Welcome to the channel. I am Nicole and I do live here in India. And today I'm going to be watching a video put out by Patrick Bet David from Valuetainment. And it is the H1B visa debate broken down, everything you need to know. Now, I find this topic really interesting for a lot of different reasons. You know, a lot of you would know that I met my husband in the US while he was on an H1B one. If that visa wasn't there, we wouldn't be here. My life would be totally different. So, and I know so many Indians that are there on H1B ones and so many that want to go on an H1B one. So I find it to be a very interesting and very relevant topic with the new administration coming in the USA at the end of January. So let's go ahead and get started. If you haven't already, give me your like, give me your subscribe, and let's go.
Imagine all the topics we debate. Would you have guessed that H-1B visa would have been the #1 topic that would create like a civil war on the conservatives, all eating each other, dog eat dog. No way, you're doing this, you're doing that. Democrats and the establishment had an incredible Christmas. They won Christmas. They caused the division, Musk versus Trump, and it worked, and everybody fell for it. And by the way, if you're on the far right or the far left, you're not going to like this video. I'm going to give you a case on both sides, pro and against, and you say, no, I don't agree with you, it's totally fine. Well, let me give you some data here for you to be thinking about. What percentage of billion-dollar startups in America do you think were started by an immigrant? Again, I, an immigrant, not born in America. I came here illegally. I came and started a business in America that became $1 billion. What?
I'm going to go with 35 to 40%. It's probably on the low side, but that's what I'm going to go. 35, 40% startups started by immigrants. It's probably closer to 60 to 70. Let's see what he says.
Percentage of all the billion-dollar startups in America do you believe were started by an immigrant? Do you think it's 10%, 20%, 30%? What if I told you it's 55%? 55% of billion-dollar startups in America was founded by an immigrant that wasn't born here? Yes.
Not
do you
surprised.
want those jobs in America? Now, some of you guys may say, let them go back to their country. Do you think other people would have started it? That's not a job. That's a business. By the way, if I ask you Fortune 500 companies, what percentage of Fortune 500 companies in America were founded by an immigrant or their child? What percentage do you think it is? Top.
Ooh, this is a hard one. Be founded by an immigrant or their child. Number of Fortune 500 companies. That's even bigger. That's got to be. That's even Trump. You know, his dad was an immigrant. That's how back you have, like far back you have to go. 60, 70, 80%. I don't know.
500 biggest companies in America. You ready? 44.8%.
Whoa, way less than I thought it would be.
Do we want those jobs? Who does that benefit? Americans. Now, do we also want the abuse of H-1B visa where an Infosys had to pay $34 million or Apple had to pay $25 million or even Facebook or some of these companies? Of course not. The system is broken. It's got to get addressed. But I'm noticing the far right, a guy responds on Twitter and tells me, because I said, our founding fathers, he says, your founding fathers. Those are not your founding fathers. You're not from America. You're not an American. I said, as an American, what makes you think you're an American? Because you live in America? That's a very interesting community that's coming out. And they're being very vocal about it, that they want me to go back to Iran. It's interesting. It's an interesting debate. I want to hear from both sides. But that's what's causing a lot of people on the left and the establishment to say, oh, thank you so much, Santa, for giving us the greatest gift. Take back the Xbox. Take back the big screen TV. Take back the car my husband got me. Take back all of that stuff. All I wanted was a war. And these guys who won, and they just can't get along even after they just won. Thank you, Santa, for this amazing gift. We're going to talk about H-1B visas today. If you get value out of this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. By the way, I got a bunch of data I want to get into. What country applies for H-1B the most? Where we ranked in the world in STEM against other countries? What the highest paying jobs in America are, yet the degrees that kids are going into, and what degrees are decreasing, which is very weird.
He actually did cover quite a bit of this in the last video that I reacted to of his, which is really the only one that I have. I had never seen this guy before, and I reacted to a video that was basically why Indian immigrants get rich, and he talked about a lot of these what he mentioned here, like the education, like where they're going into, and that types of things. So I'm assuming there's going to be a little bit of overlap there, and that's okay. But he did already cover some of this in that particular video.
And you have to realize,
I'll link that reaction up top. You can go watch it. Why do Indian immigrants get rich?
this is a competition argument that everybody's making. Some want the jobs to go to Americans. Some are saying let it go to the best people, but regardless, we have to compete in math. We have to compete in engineering. We have to compete in STEM. If we're not, and we're getting psychology degrees instead of STEM degrees, the direction's going AI and technology, we're going to get our asses handed to us long term. But let's set that aside. Quotes. This is what some people said about H1B for and against. Elon said, the reason I'm in America, along with so many critical people who built SpaceX, Tesla, and hundreds of other companies that made America strong, is because of the H1B. Take a big step back and F yourself in the face. I will go to war on this issue, the likes of which you cannot possibly comprehend. The number of people who are super talented engineers and super motivated in the U.S. is far too low. Think of this like a pro sports team. If you want your team to win the championship, you need to recruit top talent wherever they may be from.
He also did just say that the process is broken. So this might be an older quote. He did come out and say later that the H1B1 process is broken. I did see that on another video that I was watching on this particular topic. So Elon has gone both ways, although calling it broken doesn't necessarily mean that it's not necessary.
That's Elon. By the way, a lot of people are like, well, this is why all he cares about is the money and cheap labor. He's not even in the top 20 of H1B visas. But let's go to Steve Bannon, a strategist. A lot of people love to hear what this guy has to say. Let me be clear. On H1B, I want zero. This whole thing about, oh, they're only geniuses, H1B visas, that's not what it's about. It's about taking American jobs and bringing over essentially what have become indentured servants at lower wages. The thing's a scam by the oligarchs in Silicon Valley to basically take jobs from American citizens, give them to what become indentured servants from foreign countries, and pay them less. Simple. I've long said the current H1B system is badly broken and needs to be gutted. It shouldn't use a lottery. It should be based on pure merit. It shouldn't tether workers to just one corporation. Same principles I favor today. American culture has venerated mediocrity over excellence for way too long. A culture that celebrates the prom queen over math Olympia champ or the jock over the valedictorian will not produce the best engineers. That's Vivek. Now, Ron DeSantis simply said, I don't support undercutting American wages. And when it comes to Trump, I want to read two of them. One of them is from March 3rd, 2016, in his interview with Megyn Kelly, and one from today. In 2016, he said, I will end forever the use of the H-1B as a cheap labor program and institute an absolute requirement to hire American workers first for every visa and immigration program, no exception. So he wants to make America first on hiring, right? Today, he said, I have many H-1B visas on my properties. I've been a believer in the H-1B. I've used it many times. It's a great program. I've always liked the visas. That's his position today. So it seems like the party is split on it, or are they? Maybe it's just the fact that they want to make it tighter so there's no abuse, and there's some changes to simplify it. But however, before we get into that, let's just kind of learn a little bit about the H-1B visa and how it works, okay? So when you think about H-1B visa, the definition is a non-immigrant visa allowing U.S. employees to hire foreign workers in specialty occupations requiring advanced knowledge and a bachelor's degree or higher. This was created in 1990 under President Bush. Purpose was to address the skill shortages in critical industries, particularly STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. And the key features of the H-1B visa, number one, eligibility, specialty occupations requiring specific educational qualifications. Two, it's 3 years, initially extendable to up to 6 years with green card exceptions. Three, capping quotas, annual cap of 85,000 visas with 20,000 reserved for U.S.'s master's degree holders. Four, application process, employer files the LCA, submits form I-129, and worker applies through a U.S. embassy. Five, wage requirements, employers must pay H-1B holders the prevailing wages for their roles. And there's 4 levels. You'll notice your level 1 is the lower entry level. Experience is 0 to 2 years. You would get a salary at this level between $38,000 to $51,000 a year. 2, moderate 2 to 5 years of experience. In this area, experienced financial analyst, mid-level project coordinator is 51 to 65. Level 3, it's higher. 5 to 10 years of experience, 65 to 75, and level 4, 10 plus years, $78,000 to $90,000 a year.
So pausing here, this was actually a requirement that I wasn't aware of until fairly recently. I had done a reaction on a video that talked about the minimum wage requirement, and I had never heard of this. So, because in the U.S., it's a right to work generally, and the minimum wages in the U.S. are very, very low. And generally, in these types of roles, you don't have a minimum wage. But like the Indian visa here, or the Indian work visa here, they do have a minimum wage requirement, which I believe is, I think, 20 lakhs a year. Um, it looks like they also have a similar setup where they have a minimum wage requirement, although these are also quite low. So, or at least in some areas they would be. Like in California, these particular wages would be extremely low, at least, and particularly right now. Maybe in the early 2000s, these wages were quite high, but right now they would be on the lower side, and perhaps these need to be addressed.
Part of the argument here, which makes sense, is it's cheaper labor than hiring those positions in America. So, hey, I'd much rather hire these guys because, boom, they're cheaper than hiring American.
Also, if they hire from like these as consultants and they're on the books as consultants in the US, they don't have to give them health care. They don't have to provide certain, things that you have to provide to a like an employee versus someone on a visa, typically in a consultant role. So overall, they are cheaper. And but many times, I did, and I addressed it in another video too. The cost to company in terms of the salary could be more because, like, these guys may be making 65,000 a year, but the actual salary is at 80 or 85. So there's quite a large chunk of that particular amount that's going to the company that facilitated the actual job. That's how recruitment companies make their money. Like, they're not doing it out of the goodness of their hearts. They're getting a cut of the salary from that employee. So, but overall, even if the salary is a bit higher, because they don't have to give, healthcare and insurance and things to these employees, they are actually, the cost to company is much less.
This part, an absolute correct argument that they need to match the salaries to be the same. So the employer only hires somebody from IIT because they think the IIT engineer is going to be better than the MIT engineer, even though I have to pay them the same amount of money, without a consulting firm taking 20% or half the salary, which that's a whole separate conversation we'll get into.
Yes.
Number 6, portability. Workers can switch employers if proper filings are made. And 7, dual intent allows holders to apply for permanent residency while on the visa. Now, a part of the argument here happens when somebody is coming in and you give them the H1B visa. The company sometimes bullies the employees with the fear of, if you don't do this, we're going to do this to you, because they feel like they made that investment. You, the employer, has to pay $10,000 to $20,000 to have them become legal so they can work here. So there is some abuse that happens there. So that's
I've totally heard of that. So that happens, at least in the circles that I knew back, over 20 years ago when I was in the Silicon Valley working, and I knew a lot of immigrants, not just Indian, but immigrants in general working there. There was a lot. And, I've actually seen it here in India too. It's not that that doesn't happen here. I work for very large companies here in India, and the consulting companies that placed or that have placed their own people here, they tend to do the same thing here too. If you get with a bad company, you're in for a rocky road, either way, here or there.
That's how it works. Now, the argument for it and against it, this is what you'll hear. Economic contribution and innovation, talent shortages in critical industries, STEM, which I'll give you the data here in a minute, competitiveness on the global stage, economic multiplier effect, dual intent, and long-term contribution. And in arguments against it, wage suppression, displacement of U.S. workers, exploitation of outsourcing firms. This is real, by the way. This happens. And these guys, there's a lot of bullies here. Companies like Infosys and TCS that file bulk applications, reducing opportunities for smaller firms. Abuse of third-party placement contracts have been well documented. You can look into this. It's all over the place. It's some of the lawsuits we talked about earlier. Lack of domestic workforce development and lottery system inefficiency. Instead of us choosing the best, it's you got to get lucky to come here, but maybe we didn't get the best one. Why not get the best one? Imagine if you're running a small business and you do 8 interviews. Imagine if the way of hiring one of them is a lottery system. Somebody draws it and one of the 8 gets hired. Instead of the best employee that you wanted was Mary, you get Bob. You wanted Mary, but it's a lottery system. Wouldn't you rather choose Mary over Bob. That would be the merit-based system. And last but not least, fraud and loopholes. This is the lawsuit we talked about earlier with Infosys, $34 million, Apple. Okay, so now Americans, we're typically known for being very competitive, right? We love to win. We love to be number one. America first, all that stuff. Let's look at some data. STEM. When you want to go into STEM, what's one of the most important subjects in school that typically India, Middle East, Asia is obsessed with, where America will rank 34th in? You know what it is? Math. Americans are no longer competing in math the way we did. Out of 80 countries on this OECD countries list, we placed 34th in math. That's horrible. We're 16th in science. That is terrible. By the way, then I look at the data to see what country, like, Dad, what do I do when I grow up? You go become whatever you want to be, babe. Go be a school teacher. Go be a philosopher. Go be a psychologist. Study fine arts. You know what other parents say? You're going into STEM. Oh, why are you judging me?
Okay, well, again, I mean, I actually, in the video that, I reacted to of his, which is why Indian immigrants become rich, he didn't really say that, like, well, maybe he did. But, I don't think a lot of these immigrants are given, a choice. And, some of them came up hard at me on that and were like, I chose this, I chose it. And that's great. But there are a lot of engineers out there that wanted to be musicians or that wanted to be teachers. Not every one wants to be, doing what they're doing. And, they were pushed into that by parents, or even just, my husband said there just wasn't a lot of other options, if you wanted to do better, so if you wanted to have a monetary, increase in, where you were and what, how your family was at that time, you chose the engineering path because that was what was the best one, not necessarily what they wanted to do. And, so, okay, let's continue.
Because one day you're going to have a wife and kids and life's going to be expensive and you have to be competitive. Let me follow my passion. Okay, honey, go to fine arts. Joey, leave her alone and him alone. You go get your fine arts degree, sweetheart. Do whatever you want to do. I believe in you. You get your fine arts degree. Mom, did you know the local museum only pays 32 grand a year? Those cheap bastards. How do you think, what do you think you do? Check this out with STEM. You ready? Percentage of total graduates in STEM fields. China, 41%. Russia, 37%. Germany, 36%. Iran, 33%. India, 30%. France, 26%. Mexico, 26%. You know where we are? 20%. China's 2xing us. Not only do they have a bigger population, then imagine they're also 2xing the focus on STEM. How do you compete with them in the future?
Okay, but we do need artists and we do need, music, and we need other things. It's not just STEM. That doesn't. Okay.
So that's real data. Competition, let's talk raw competition. Next one here, you ready? Top countries by number of STEM graduates. China, 3.57 million. India, 2.55. US, 820. That's where we rank against India and China. India is 3x. China is nearly 4x. Well, let's continue. The salaries in America that pay the most, the jobs that pay the most. Electrical engineering, $122,000. Computer science, 108. Mechanical engineering, 106. Economics, 101. Engineering, 100. Finance, civil engineering, chemistry, mathematics, 86. That's what it pays. Now, parents, this is a very important chart for you, and some of you guys that are watching this younger, this is important to see. You know what this chart tells us? From 2021 to 2031, STEM occupations are projected to grow faster than others. By 2031, 10.8, others 4.9%, 2x. You think maybe it's important for us to realize if you want to have a good job long-term to be taken care of, maybe it's STEM. Maybe you got to find a way to compete in STEM. Maybe there's something there. But let's look at what we are focusing on and what degrees are increasing in America and what's going lower. You ready? Most popular college majors. At the top, business. That's good. Number 2, nursing. 3 is education. 4 is biology, decreasing. 5, psychology went up 2 spots, by the way. Psychology is going up. 6, engineering dropped almost 4 spots. It dropped almost 4 spots in the last 7 years. How does it drop 4 spots when everything we see is AI, engineering, NVIDIA, Tesla? How do you not see what's going on with this, right? Who are we making the hero? Kids are confused. And in other countries, they're like, no. We're going to compete India. We're going to compete China. We're going to compete STEM America, psychology. There's a place for it, but this is why they're competing with us in a time like this. And even if you go to computer science, used to be up there, still the same level, and Americans go into those degrees. And by the way, if you're wondering, we looked at which country has the most H1B visas. It's not even close. India's number one, 74.9% of the 500,000 that we have roughly, give or take. China at 2, but that's only 12%. Then it's a big drop off. Canada, South Korea, Philippines, Taiwan, Mexico, Brazil, it's not even close. India's at the top. Now, why would India be at the top? Is it just because it's cheaper? Is there something else we don't know about? Maybe they have a better university than ours, and it's called IIT Institute. Maybe I went and spoke at this institute 6 years ago. Maybe when I went over there and studied these guys, these kids was fire, and I was looking at numbers, interviewing everybody. I was with a guy named Divyang Torakia, multi-billionaire. I was with a lady called Arundhati Bhattacharya. I think if I'm butchering her name, she was the State Bank of India's chairman at the time, 240,000 employees. And I'm kind of going through this stuff, and I'm noticing how hard is it to get into Harvard? You ready? 10% of applicants get a job at Harvard. You know what percentage of applicants at IIT Institute get accepted? Almost 2%. It's tougher to get into IIT Institute than it is to get into Harvard. By the way, in America, in many cases, you see the criticism, rich people can get their kids into that school. Do you know this company we talked about, Infosys? The founder is considered the Bill Gates of India. His name is Narayana Murthy. Do you know, imagine you're one of the richest guys in India. You're worth $6 billion, okay? You went to IIT Institute. Your son wanted to get into IIT Institute. With all the name, the wealth, the connections, the contacts, your son didn't get into IIT Institute. In an interview, I believe with 60 Minutes, he says, my son didn't get accepted. So he had to settle and go to Cornell University. Imagine, he settled at Cornell University. And by the way, if you want to know which employers hire the most H-1B visas, here's what you got here. Number one is Amazon, then it's Infosys. Look at the number, 9265, 8140, Cognizant. Then you got Google, Tata Technologies, Meta, which is Facebook. Then you got Microsoft. After Microsoft, Apple, HCL, IBM, Walmart, Capgemini. And then after Capgemini, you have Intel, Deloitte, Ernst & Young, Tata, Amazon Web Services, Accenture, LT, Mindtree Limited.
I mean, if you look at like with Infosys and Cognizant and things, these are Indian companies that are, if you look at it as being exploited or, you know, as Indian workers here being exploited in the US, it's basically what they're doing, and it's you know, they're doing it to themselves. You know, this is something, you know, they're making their money by exploiting their own people, if that's how you are seeing this as an issue.
Oracle, Fidelity Investments. Then you have Tesla at 22nd spot. Then you have JP Morgan Chase. You see some of the names that are here. Salesforce, NVIDIA. I mean, you can see from here, you know, Amazon is a big part of it. Amazon was even upset in 2017. I think they filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration over H-1B visas, having to do what countries they could recruit from. Anyways, you can look that up. It's easy to find. But when you think about this, the number, illegal immigration, 20 million illegal immigrants, 15 million, whatever the number is. Pew Research, 11 million. We saw the numbers under Biden administration. The H-1B is 500,000. It's legal. Do you remember in the debate between Hillary Clinton and Trump when they said, he takes advantage of the tax cuts and all this other stuff? And he says, yeah, of course I do. Every single one of them. And so do all your donors. They do as well. If you don't like it, how come you haven't done anything about it? This is not illegal. It is offered for businesses to use. We've hired a handful of H-1B visas over the years. And we see a worker we like, we want to make the offer to this person, they come on board. Before I give you my ideas on what I think we need to do with this here, let me talk about the Indian community. You know what's funny? As a parent, I'm always studying other communities and other parents on how they raise their kids. Always. By the way, I don't care if you're white, black, Mormon, Muslim, Christian, Indian, Mexican, Salvadorian. I don't care. I just want to know what you do to get your kids to do better. I want to learn from you. Same way you are. I don't just say, it's only got to be white. It's only got to be Middle Eastern. It's only got to be Christian. If you work that way, good luck getting good ideas from people. I could care less who is giving me the good ideas. By the way, let me give you some data that's going to get you thinking. I wrote about the Indian culture almost 2 years ago. There's an article out there you can look at, highest income ethnicity, why Indian Americans become rich and raise successful kids. I looked at the data. They make, on average, the successful immigrants, $120,000 on average. Some of them even shows $150,000. How's this even possible? By the way, when you look at the numbers on marriages, watch this. Do you know, according to National Center for Family and Marriage Research, do you know what communities get the most divorces? Black Americans have the highest divorce rate, 31%. Hispanics, 18.5%. Whites, 15.1%. Other, 12.4%. You know what it is for the Indian family? Some studies show 1.3% divorce rate. The highest you'll find is 6%. Why is that? Because they stay together and their project, their startup, becomes their kid. Both the husband and wife commit to making this kid a leader, a net positive in society. Do you think that's a good thing? Do you think it's a good thing that that kid is being raised in an environment where mom and dad are both there to offer whatever they can? Marriage is not easy. I'm not going to sit here and tell you marriage is easy, but that's an edge that they got. And then they're telling their kids, engineer STEM, that's what they're encouraging them to do. This article continues to say why Indian parents do so well. They promote kinship, self-sacrifice. They are trustworthy and friendly with their kids, quality time. They nurture their kids' talents. They are inquisitive, culture, religious tolerance. Indian parents are very judgmental. Like they'll say, that friend you're with, he's a loser. They'll say stuff like that instead of, oh, it's okay, Bobby. They multitask. This is what they talk about the community. I want to learn from anybody and everybody that's winning at the highest level. So when you think about this, I was raised in a family where my dad worked 5 to 9, not 9 to 5, 5 to 9. He left at 5 o'clock in the morning to a city called Karaj. He came home at 9 o'clock. And he did that 6 days a week. And then we came to Iran, went to a refugee camp, came to the States. My wife and I have been married 15 years. Challenging. We got 4 kids. We've moved to 3 different states. We have 2 kids born in California, 1 in Texas, 1 in Florida. And now we live in Florida, right? And we run businesses, 9 of them. And I love it. My kids are at work all the time. My wife is in the office on a daily basis. We work together. We enjoy it. But there's a few things we have to be thinking about when we get people that come to America and they come to our schools. Do we not want to keep these guys? And by the way, number 2, say somebody goes to the best schools in India and they're the smartest guys in India or whatever place. Do you not want them to come here? Luka Doncic, we want him here. He could have stayed where he's from. Joker, 3-time MVP, 2-time MVP. We want the guy here, right? Giannis, they came here. They didn't play basketball while they're at. Ohtani came here to give us his greatness and won the World Series against the Yankees, which I can't stand. But we want that talent here, right? We want them here. Do we want to sit there and say, no, you're not American. Get out of here, Giannis. Why do you want to do that? Ohtani, you took a job away from a Dodger. Everybody playing for the Dodgers should be a white nationalist. That's kind of weird, right? There's a nationalism. I love America, but that part is a little bit confusing. So people that come here, let's try to keep the best. No lottery, merit, purely the best of the best that come over here. Number 3, the salary that they're going to get goes the same as a salary somebody else that can work here gets. If they're a better candidate, let them get the job. If they can compete for, what's wrong with that?
Merit,
let us
salary.
compete for it. Instead of being like, well, that's not fair and we create rules that's tougher for them, why don't we compete better? It's almost like I tweeted something about working 80 hours a week. My dad left every day and worked very hard. I wanted to replicate that. We used to respect people that were hardworking. Michael Jordan, all these athletes, the movies you watch, the generals you admire, the mothers who have kids who don't work 80 hours a week when you have a newborn. You work 120 hours a week. Are you not a good role model? I cannot tell you, my wife's had 4 kids. Every single time I saw this, I'm like, I can't believe what mothers go through. Hey, mothers, you're a prime example. How much do you work? How many times throughout the night do you wake up to nurse? You go without any sleep. What do? You're a hero. We ought to admire these guys and turn them into heroes. I'm reading a book right now by
I'm a hero.
a guy named Robert Half, who built a consulting from recruiting, $7 million company. He wrote this book in the 80s, 90s. My wife got it for me for Christmas. And I'm reading it, and he's talking about in the 80s, there was a movement that took place in capitalism that anybody that was rich was unethical. So, hey, Vivek, unethical. Patrick, unethical. These guys made their money. These rich people did it because they destroyed someone's life. Are you kidding me? You know how hard business is. Do you know how difficult it is? Do you know the founding companies of any company, how hard they work? We got to recognize these guys. If you demonize them, your kids don't want to go out there and be those heroes one day. Then what? What's wrong with that? I have so much respect for anybody that works very hard for their dreams. I don't impose it on you. I love it. I can't see myself doing anything else. Matter of fact, most founders that work 60, 70, 80 hours a week, they don't do it because of money. They do it because they love it. Do you think Elon's trying to make another $100 billion because he wants to buy another waterfront property? He can buy a state today with this $500 billion. He's not driven by that. He's driven by something else he's personal. Doesn't mean you have to like him. Doesn't mean you're going to agree with everything he talks about. Doesn't mean you're going to sit there and say, oh, he's phenomenal in every way. He does everything. That's a choice. But you think he's just doing it because he wants to save $40,000 in salary? Really? You think that's why you really think that's the motive? Some may be. I'm not quite sure he's in that community of doing that. This next one, I don't know why we don't do. We ought to respect immigrants that come to America that love America. If you love America, you want to contribute, you want to serve the military, you want to do these things, awesome.
Yep.
Let's recognize them. You love my country? I love it. Welcome.
Fabulous.
Now, what are you going to do for America? I came in not thinking America owed me anything. I came here saying I owe America a lot. And I felt like I gave, and I'm going to continue doing for the rest of my life, including my kids. We ought to respect the immigrants that are willing to love your country, my country,
100%.
our country. I want to say our founding fathers. A guy on Twitter said,
And
what
he
makes
should
you think you can
say
say our
our
founding
founding
fathers?
fathers.
This one guy responds back to one of the tweets and says the following to me. He said, why should Americans be expected to compete with a foreigner who works for 80 hours a week just so that foreigner can have a shot at success in a country he didn't build? What's in it for Americans? And this guy named Johnny responds back saying, it's not the foreigner that can have a shot. It's so the company can hire the person that wants to contribute to the most value for the money offered. It's the employer's job position. They get to give it to the person who is going to invest the most into the job. You didn't build this country either. Our parents and grandparents did. What have you built? He goes back. So you have no solidarity with or loyalty to your fellow Americans. Instead of trying to build your own community by giving one of your neighbors a shot at a job, you'd rather import a foreigner, multiply that mindset by 10 million other sociopaths so you destroy your culture. He goes back and forth. This is what some people are thinking and saying. Whoa, it's kind of weird, right? I don't remember seeing this kind of stuff, but it's weird that's happening right now. Listen, I love when people have American pride. I love it. I love when somebody's Mexican to have pride. I love when Salvadorians have pride. I don't have a problem if Venezuelans, Muslims, you got pride all day long. But if you combine pride with envy and hate, I mean, it produces what's going on right now. And I'm not a fan of that. I'm just not a fan of that. I'm very proud to be Armenian. I'm very proud to be Assyrian. I'm proud that I was born in Iran under the Shah. And I love the fact that I was an American. I served the military here. I absolutely love it. I feel like I'm the luckiest man alive. Super grateful for the life that God's given me. And so my insurance company, a lot of times when I would give the MVP to somebody in front of our 10,000 people, I would always watch to see how other people react. And I would always see a couple of people go and tear down the guy that won. Oh, well, let me tell you, that guy kissed his ass. Oh, he did it illegally. Oh, you know, he stole. Oh, you know, he did this. You know, that community, that was their way of wanting to not do the work. They want to win without doing the work. That person's willing to do the work. And this community says, well, to me, it's not all about money. Well, that person made the money and was a good father and a good husband and a good wife. You just don't want to do the work and you like to make excuses. That's a tough place to be. We don't admire people like that. By the way, to those of you that just heard me say this and you don't like it, you're gonna go out there and trash my Twitter or whatever YouTube it is. I don't care. I don't wake up to win you over. I chose a long time ago to be a leader amongst leaders. That's my number one. And I fear one thing, and it's a guy upstairs. That's it. Everything else, it's easy peasy for me. Luckiest man alive. So if you see this video, and if you agree with it, share it. If you don't agree with it, share it and trash it. But whatever you do, respectfully debate all the ideas. I want to hear from you. Anyways, if you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to.
Excellent. So he brought up some good things. I have to agree. I think moving it to a merit-based system would be much better. I mean, like this lottery, like why? Like, doesn't make a lot of sense. Like he said, if you really wanted Mary, you should be able to hire Mary and not have to be stuck with Doug. And I think to pay them. And now he didn't really get into the consultants. You know, he kind of pushed it aside and said they would talk about that later. The consulting companies taking, you know, a good 20 or even 30%. And you know, I think that's a separate discussion that needs to happen. But I think too, you know, they should be paying these guys American rates. If the organization really needs that person, then pay them what they're worth. Pay them what they would be worth. And I think that should happen. And you know, in regards to consulting companies and things, I think that's a much bigger discussion on how that can be handled and what exactly their role and worth is in this entire process. So I really did enjoy watching this. I think I'll try to look and see if he has any more. I do really like his content. This is Patrick and Bet David. And it's that I am right there, right? Patrick Bet David. And it's very well put together and a very good informative video. If you like the content, please do give a like. Please do give a subscribe. If you'd like to see me react to something else, please put it in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. As always, I love you and bye-bye.